All right. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
So this first question is real tough. What's your name?
I'm Jean Sellis.
And how long have you lived in Churchill?
Since 1976, we moved in August to start the school year.
Are you from Churchill originally?
I'm from Holland, Michigan.
Okay. All right. So what was your job at Manhattan Christian?
Oh, I've been teacher aide. I've been teacher for second grade and teacher for preschool, and also a half a year for third grade when I started.
My name's Mark Ekoff. I've been born and raised in the Gallatin Valley. Most of the time, what I am is a missionary. I have been on a number of missions teams. Intermittently spent time elsewhere, but I would consider myself a 31-year resident of the Valley and of Churchill.
Rob Broxma. I run a pawn shop in Bozeman. Grew up in Churchill, but I've lived in the Gallatin Valley my entire life.
Kim Vanderar. I'm a teacher at Manhattan Christian. Okay, you're 30 here at Manhattan Christian, but it's your 40 total.
Brett Heidema. I farm, and then I'm from Churchill originally. I've lived here my whole life, except for when I went off to college for a couple years. So,
I'm Mark Kim. I grew up in this area and have lived here my whole life. And Churchill's home. We farm right out of town here, and so that's where I've been.
It seems silly for me to ask what it was like. I know it was probably very, very difficult, but would you be willing to talk about the day of the crash?
I would be glad to talk about the day of the crash. What do you want to know? You know how you always say, well, when's the last time you see them? Well, that morning, he said, see ya. And I said, well, when will that be? And he said, later. And it was just a typical day. He was out driving with the kids, and I was in my classroom at the end of the day. And Mr. Van Dyke came and he said, I just heard that the driver's ed car has been in an accident. And the driver's ed car is in one ditch, and it was a semi that's in the other ditch. And I said, oh, that's good. They're both on the opposite sides. They probably are okay. He said, we don't know anything yet. We haven't heard anything, but we'll let you know.
So the driver's ed car was going out for their afternoon drive. Mr. Sellis, Eric Ekoff, Matthew Lucht, and Alex Van Egmond were driving, and they were coming back from Bozeman and lost control, and then they veered in front of a food service truck.
It had a storm earlier that had put down a couple inches of really slushy snow. The car, it appeared like it had slid sideways, and the truck kind of T-boned the car, and then the car went off into the ditch.
Do you remember where you were when you heard the news about the accident?
It was after school. I was playing a video game. That's when I heard from my parents. They came home and then they told me.
The day of the accident, I saw all three of them at school.
I was actually about a mile from where it happened.
That day I was trucking grain We were hauling some of our grain to Townsend.
We were actually after school and practice, and we knew something was going on.
I was helping my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and she got a phone call, said there had been a car accident, and it involved some Manhattan Christian kids, and that's all whoever called her knew.
I actually tried pretty hard talking Alex out of skipping driver's ed that day to come golfing with me, because Belgrade used to have an indoor golf course, and I bought a new driver the night before.
My brother and the head basketball coach came and told me that there was a really bad accident and that in a half hour my practice started and my team is going to be up there and 3 kids are going to be missing.
The principal at that time, he informed me that there was an accident. He didn't have any details.
So I immediately called the school, and the principal answered, and I could tell it was very serious. He was very emotional. And then he said, if you could come to school right now, that'd be very good.
We were kind of waiting for some news, and we kind of got it over a period of about a half hour, probably off and on, and get a few more details until finally we knew it was something very serious. So
I right away said, are they okay? And they wouldn't answer me because they couldn't, because the parents had not been notified.
I was actually on my way home on Church or on Amsterdam Road, and one of the firefighters told me that I got to get home right away. So I went home, and my parents told me, kind of like right as I walked in the door, what actually the accident was.
It was actually my day to drive driver's ed that day. So that's always something that continues to be in my mind is, you know, if things had been the other way, what would have happened? What would have been different? You know? I didn't go to the accident site. I don't think my parents wanted me to go there. I don't think they wanted me to see that. And also, I don't think I really wanted to either. I got a phone call from Randy at that point too, from Mr. Van Dyke, and he asked me if I had any place to go or if I needed anybody to talk to or anything like that.
My first task was to go and gather the families and ask them to come into the conference room.
They said, no, you can't go to the accident site. They're calling all the family together at school.
So we all kind of gathered into that room and we were just kind of waiting.
And the Ekoffs came in and they said, we've been at the site. There are no survivors. And it's like, no, that can't be. There were 4 in that car. Somebody has to still be alive. And so my heart just left it. It's just the way it is. I won't believe it till I hear it from someone who's official.
One of my most vivid memories is little Michael Lucht, who I don't even know if he was in school yet, going up to his dad and saying, you know, I want Matthew to come home. And then Greg said he can't come home. And Michael just crumbling onto his dad's lap.
And then the coroner came in and the chaplain, and they did say, it is true, there are no survivors. And then my heart sank. It was like, it is true. It really is true.
I hadn't heard anything about this and get to practice that night. As soon as I walked in, I don't know, I knew something was up. I don't remember who told me what had happened, but it was just surreal. It was
A lot of emotion for sure. I mean, just didn't know how to respond. I mean, I broke down in tears pretty much right away.
I couldn't really find the tears. I was still in shock. I don't think the reality had set in my mind, or I don't think my mind had the capacity to understand. I would say the full gravity of everything didn't hit me for a couple of weeks probably.
Finally, they did tell me that they were all killed and that they're going to be informing parents and they're getting counselors in, and this whirlwind went through my mind of what are we going to say to the kids? What are we going to say? Like, my team's up there, and it was probably one of the most difficult days of my life.
Well, it was devastating, and the older brother of one of the boys was in the practice, and so I don't know. It was just such a shock. I think we were all just numb.
When they gave me the go-ahead that I could go tell the kids, we walked in the gym, and I remember a couple of the kids just say things like, "Ooh, they're going to be in big trouble because they're late." Just that starting out just broke my heart. Then we sat them down and told them that their buddies had been in a bad accident and were killed. And they reacted in complete emotional breakdown. I mean, their best friends were gone.
I recall thinking this is probably the first time I've ever slept in a room without him, which is a really strange sensation for the first time.
I don't know. I sat there for half the night and with all the other guys that we were supposed to be practicing that night, and just let out a lot of tears at that time.
This was happening to all of us. It was not something that I had to deal with by myself or just my family. We were all there. And we could look at each other, and we knew we were interconnected at that time. And even as the months went by, there was always somebody there. God provided so many people that came in. So it was all God's story. He was working through that to make it so that we could step into that story as well.
Father, we've gathered together in the name of Jesus in this place. Thank you for you. Grant your blessing in our time together, that we may find joy and peace, because you are our God. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
As I wrote out the names of each family, it stung. I'm sure it stung you too. There was a name missing from each family. That completeness that you have in your family isn't complete anymore. As I prepared my remarks for today, I wanted to comfort you with words about the victory in Jesus, about the comfort that we have in knowing that our loved ones are beholding the very face of God today.
I've been hearing a lot of people say lost. The word lost, like somebody's lost someone, but when you think about it, none of these people have been lost. Because they've all been found. Like, they were the greatest friend they could ever have, and they're always going to be there, and they're always going to be here. Amazing grace, because they've been found. I would just like to say thank you to all the families in Mrs. Sellis, that I got to know these people.
Just to share a few stories about all the kids. They would always go over, come to our house between driver's head and basketball practice. Man, those guys were loud. I remember studying on Monday night for some exams, when they came over before the game, and they ate so much, and Eric would, he'd always win, and they always played NBA Street. He'd always come over and create players and always play. I remember Eric, he'd always win and he'd always give a smirk to the other guys because he was the sorest loser of them all, and Eric hated losing. And Matt didn't care if he lost. He just was jumping up and yelling as long as he could yell, as long as he could make some noise. That's all Matt liked to do. And Alex always had a big smile, and he was always was looking around and always making someone laugh. He was always a good guy.
Bob and I each shared a common torment. I'm a Red Sox fan. He was a Cubs fan. Between the two of us, that's almost 200 years of not ever winning a championship. I think only once in a lifetime does a man like Bob come along that touches a person the way Bob touched me. I remember when my daughter needed to have brain surgery back in the Mayo Clinic. Who in the world did God provide a car for us through? It was Bob Sellis. My pickup truck was getting old. It was a gas guzzler. It was breaking down a lot. Bob knew it. Handed me the keys to his car. I took my daughter back to Rochester, Minnesota, and she had the operation that she needed to have done. Bob Sellis, without a doubt, was Manhattan Christian's greatest disciple. He was a servant to us all.
We have grieved and mourned a great deal in the past few days. Time has moved slowly, but from another perspective, time is swiftly marching on. And it's time for us to think about beginning the resumption of our normal routines. And so I want to challenge you this afternoon. If Mr. Sellis were standing here in my shoes, I think he would challenge you. The day is coming for all of us when we will have to die, and our bodies will return to the dust, and our spirits will go back to God who gave them to us. We are here today to comfort each other and hold each other up in God's amazing grace and strength. But there is one comfort that rises above all others. It is belonging to Jesus.
Could you describe maybe what Matthew, Eric, and Alex were like?
What kind of impression did they leave on you?
I don't know of any boys who aren't competitive. For the most part, they like to win, and these guys were that way, all three of them. They wanted to win, but there was something, they had a big heart, all of them did, in my opinion, for each other.
Do you have a favorite memory of them?
Boy, I think the last game that Matthew played, we were going to the game, and Matthew asked me if he could do devotions, and I usually prepared him, and I said, no, that's fine, you may do devotions. And he gave a devotional on living as if it's one of your last days, and that really impacted me later, knowing what happened. But that game also, he just did awesome in that game and really hit a new high and a new level for himself. And it was the last game he played, and that was a really good memory for me of him.
Well, Matthew is one of the most genuinely kind people that I've ever met. No matter how you were to him, he was always just genuinely kind back to you.
He always had a joke, or just off the wall jokes. So he was always messing around. It seemed like, and he didn't take life too seriously, I guess I'd say. And he was really smart too. I remember that. He was very smart.
He was a pretty eager kid. I think of all the kids in that class, he was the probably most skilled at math.
Matthew, he didn't join our class, I think it was until 6th grade. Extremely high achiever, I would say. He had a really, really strong drive to do better in everything. He was always practicing hard to do better. Really bright kid. Matthew was pretty smart. Matthew was one of the few that took school very seriously.
I was one of the football coaches, and he was a young player there. You know, he was on the sideline, you could put him in a game or something like that. He says, "Ready to go, coach." He'd always say that. So he was very eager.
You know, a lot of my memories with Matthew are, we watched movies a lot. We used to go to each other's houses and hang out. The one movie, it's ridiculous, but for some reason all the guys in our class really loved Undercover Brother. So for some reason I've got this weird association in my mind of Matthew with that movie.
I remember him talking about the pickup he was going to get when he got his license. I think he was going to call it Black Beauty or something. He always thought his jokes were just hilarious, and he'd always die from laughing just from his own jokes. Yeah, he was well liked by everyone, and I don't know if anyone would have had a bad thing to say about him.
He was kind of like the father of the team, the caring person of the team. And Eric Ekoff was just an extremely hard worker who just got things done.
He's just a very good kid. I know that my son was very close to Eric, and then also his twin brother Mark.
It was interesting because Mark and Eric were twins, obviously, and Mark was always a little bit quieter, and Eric was very, very outgoing.
You need anything, he would be there. Just a nice, good, kind kid.
Eric and I spent essentially every waking moment of our lives together. Obviously, we were identical twins. I can't really remember any times or any nights that we didn't spend together. Eric himself spent a lot of time making friends and was very good at making friends. I was definitely, growing up, the introvert of the two of us. Eric was much more extroverted. Eric was, I would say, very athletically talented. Like basketball, he was on the basketball team. In track and field, he would do the sprints because he was a fast runner, and then I ended up doing the long distance. He was also a bright kid, also smart. I imagine of the two of us, he would have been the one with the doctorate, and I would have been the one who was happy with the bachelor's. One other thing about Eric is that he loved animals. He was extremely interested in the animal kingdom. He always had some sort of reptile. I was always afraid of that. I hated him, but Eric always had so much joy in taking care of those lizards and getting to know them more and understanding them better. I would say that would typify a lot of what his personality was like, was he was a very caring person. I remember with Eric, our ability to communicate was unbelievable. Like, our ability to understand what each other was thinking. I can't tell you how many times Eric and I would answer for each other. I can't tell you how many times, like, somebody would ask Eric a question, I'm there, and I would be like, he wants it this way. That kind of stuff, man, I love that. I don't think any two people can understand each other as well as we understood each other. I've seen twins that don't get along very well, brothers that don't get along very well, but Eric and I definitely got along really well. We got to play some pranks on some teachers sometimes. That was a lot of fun. We went whole days in school living as each other. And sometimes our classmates would hardly notice. You know, and these are close friends. This is Robbie, this is Rob. I mean, he would struggle. Sometimes it would be before school, like Alex would probably be one of the guys who'd be like, guys, switch desks today. Like, see how long you can get, you know, living in each other's shoes, and no problem. That was fun.
I grew up right around the corner from the Ekoffs, so spent a lot of time with both Mark and Eric growing up. We always were riding bikes around Church Hill and building forts, and then Alex was one of my best friends growing up, so we spent a ton of time together. Pulling sleds behind the four-wheelers, just kind of your basic kids growing up on farms type of things.
In my opinion, personality-wise, he was kind of the goofy kid on the team. He got all the guys laughing all the time, and it was kind of the life of the party on the team, you could say. He played a little wild, kind of fit his personality, and it was so much fun to watch him play. He would come down the court, and to make every coach nervous, he would just huck a long pass to somebody way down the court and try to alley-oop it to some kid or something. But he just loved to kind of play the fun side of basketball, and he left a lot of good memories in that side.
Alex is super outgoing. I don't think there's anybody that did not get along with him. I've mentioned he's one of my best friends growing up, but I bet there's 20 other guys I would say the same thing.
Some of my favorite memories with Alex are just memories camping in his backyard. We spent a lot of time, messing around on his farm. We built a raft one time out of just iodine barrels from the milk barn and a sheet of plywood, and we used to raft that thing down the canal. Alex was always up for an adventure like that. He was an extremely fun kid and really hard to get down. He was eternally optimistic, I would say. He was maybe a little bit more of a troublemaker than a couple of the other guys.
One summer we were at his house. His parents gave us a bunch of firecrackers to keep ourselves entertained, but we got sick of that. We just started lighting small fires and putting them out. Eventually we got one that got a little too big for us, so Alex just bolts, runs away. I go running in the house, find his older brother Clint. He comes out and starts putting it out. His dad comes running in out of the barn to help put it out. For about the next hour we were stuck looking for Alex. We did finally find him. He was hiding underneath a neighbor's porch.
I remember that when they were younger, Grant and Alex, they shot out all the glass windows in the sheds on the farm place we were on with their BB guns. And when I finally confronted them about it, Alex said, well, it was okay because they were all old anyway, so.
He's a big golfer. Alex loved to golf and he was really good. And he got a hole-in-one one time. And I still remember the time he told me about getting a hole-in-one on hole number 5 on the par 3 course at Cottonwood Hills. The biggest smile you've ever seen is when Alex got his first hole-in-one.
Mr. Sellis was born in Muskegon, Michigan. We met at Calvin College. And then in 1976, we got married and moved out to Montana for his first job. He was a pretty good storyteller. He could remember, so he would be the one that would tell stories around the table. He liked to have fun, so he liked basketball and sports and all those kinds of things, but he also liked going fishing and collecting baseball cards. He had stamp collections, and the best part was he had a twin brother who also collected. It became a family kind of event. He loved being a teacher. That was who he was. He said, I wasn't all that good of a student, so I understand the student who doesn't get it. There has to be another way to explain it to them. And if it takes 10 times to do it, or 100, I'm willing to take that time. He coached cross country, track. He had run cross country in high school, came in last most times. So he said, I know what it's like. Winning wasn't everything. It wasn't where you came in. It was, did you run better than you thought you could? Was it your personal best? He was a good dad. He liked to do things with them. So teaching them to problem solve so that they could be involved as well. That was important for him. And he loved to garage sale. He'd go with the girls and go garage sailing to see if they could find any good buys. I think I love that he loved God the most. He always said, when you write my obituary, you don't have to say all the things I did. God was first in my life. Church and family were in there as well. And that's what I lived for.
What's something that you want people to always remember about Eric and the others in this accident?
The first thing I guess that I would want people to remember about the guys specifically, Matt, Eric, Alex, and Mr. Sellis, would just be that they're 4 guys who love the Lord. They're 4 guys who were taken from earth before we wanted them to. We wanted more time with all of them. I wanted more time with all of them, but we didn't get that. For me, that's hard to understand. It's hard for me to completely wrap my head around why I didn't get more time with all these guys. But at the same time, I look back and I look at the ways that I've changed. I look back at the ways that this community has rallied together to become more tight-knit. I look at the ways just our class, the class of 06, the way that we cared for each other after that. And I see a lot of things that are positive. This Churchill community is very tight-knit. In a time when you lose what's most important to you, plus more, I can't tell you how important that is and how how much of a blessing it is to have a community like that. I can't imagine if people go through the same kind of tragedy I did, that we all did. I can't imagine what it'd be like if they had to do it on their own. I did take some comfort knowing that an entire community was grieving with me.
Anytime there are events that are so large that they make conflicts just seem so small, works to unify and strengthen a community. And that's one of those events. There's a verse in Ephesians 6 that talks about knowing how wide and long and high and deep is the love of God. And during that time, we saw that. I guess my final words were, I still pray for those families every week. The power of prayer is healing in itself for us, but God also uses those prayers to carry out His will. And yeah, I still remember that accident. I still pray for those people every week.
The details of the crash are probably not that important, and the details in my mind have somewhat disappeared. I think it's the effect of how a community copes and reacts with that, and I think that in the end it built a stronger community.
I think time sometimes heals some things, but in this case, every time January 23 happens to show up on the calendar, all those memories come back, just vivid again, of where you were and what happened and how you handled it. And I know for myself, when I see a member of that family, I just always want to say, how are you? How you doing? And just always thinking about them and their big loss compared to, the things I lost. I didn't lose a sibling. I didn't lose a dad. Then the whole community and the families got together, and any memorial money that anybody wanted to donate after the accident, those families collected that money and gave it back to the school so that we could build a brand new gym. And that's why it's called the Memorial Event Center. There's a little plaque out front, that explains, why it's called that, with the names of Mr. Sellis and the 3 boys on it as well. That's kind of, I think, how we sort of all managed to heal.
Yeah, I just don't want us to ever forget the people that they were. Having had the privilege of knowing them, they left a mark and an impact on me. I just don't want people to forget how close and important their friends are. And we don't always know if we'll be here tomorrow or if some of them will be here tomorrow. So I think to realize how important these relationships are now, that's what I don't want people to forget.
Anytime you go through a life-changing event, I don't care what it is, it changes the way you think, it changes the way you act. We aren't guaranteed another day on this earth. We don't know. And when you're younger, and those kids, you don't think like that. The reality is it made me aware that it's important how you treat each other. It's important who you live for. And I'm referring to my faith with Christ. It's important because I have hope that I'll see them again.
For a long time, all the guys on the C team got together for breakfast once a year. I'm in touch with probably the Venegmans more so than anybody, but I'd say there's still some healing process. My oldest son, his middle name is after Alex. It's Reno Alexander. I still think about him all the time. Eventually, like I said, you kind of do get onto life as normal. I'd just say trying to, continue on their kindness to other people. Or, they were just genuinely wanted to get to know you. They wanted to be your friend.
I feel like I feel like I wouldn't say gotten over it, but I understand that some things happen. God has a plan in our lives, and as a class, we really became pretty close after that. You experience something like that, and you have a bond for life when you go through something like that.
Some of the ways that I remember are looking back at the pictures, looking back at even some of the things that he made, the little projects that he had done and given to me as gifts, knowing that there was love there, knowing that that we had something special as a family. And just remembering in my mind, you know, who he was and who he cared for. When our kids get together, we talk about those things because each of the children respond to him differently as well. And so hearing their stories and their perspective helps me to know that it's still there. Those memories are still there. And we can keep going because he would never want us to say, give up. It's perseverance. We can get through this. We can do this. And so I would think that Mr. Sellis would want everyone to know how important they are, that each person is unique, each person is different, but we all have strengths that we can claim as our own. It's all about what can I do with this that will make God's world a better place, and go from there. Be who you are, but go with God.
I struggled for a long time of guilt. You know, what if I hadn't asked Eric to choose or Eric to switch that day with me? I can still think of times, even when I'm driving my truck out in the country, when I think, man, there's a chance that Eric would be riding with me. You know, that I could be making this memory with somebody else. Those are tough, and they remain tough. They still bring up real feelings of sadness. I guess pretty profound sadness. Just the fact that, man, like I was born with like a built-in best friend, and that guy's just not on earth anymore. Maybe it's unhealthy for me to think about it this way, but I think about it in the reverse a lot. I think a lot about like, okay, what if I'd have been the one in the car? You know, what if I would have passed away? How would I want my brothers? How would I want my parents? How would I want my community to react? I think it does more honor to these guys to be able to turn around and try and rise out of the mess. There's a lot of people who would give up on a lot of stuff. I'm thankful that I haven't. I'm thankful that in a lot of ways it's caused me to have to really kind of think introspectively about the kind of guy I want to be, and it's caused me to make a lot of changes for the better.
My name is Brian Ecoff, the brother of Eric Ecoff. And I don't know if this is true for Mr. Sellis. I don't know if he did it this year, but I remember that Mr. Sellis, he'd always say, whose turn is it to bring us home? after driver's ed, I had the privilege of going to driver's ed with them, and they always asked whose turn is it brings home, and this time it was God's turn.